The clerk of courts in Cincinnati, Ohio has decided to try to hide eviction records from landlords to prevent tenants from being rejected during the application process. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Ohio. So, as I've stated before, Ohio is actually one of the most landlord-friendly states in the entire country, and they have a lot of, really good things that they are doing up in Ohio. But unfortunately, in the big cities of Ohio, they're still trying to punish landlords and make it as difficult as possible for us to run our businesses. So, up in Cincinnati, in Hamilton County, Ohio, the county clerk of courts is trying to pass this new rule that would basically delete all of the evictions that are older than 3 years old from the city's website. So their logic, the court clerk's logic is that, well, a lot of landlords only check this website for evictions, and so therefore that will give people who have evictions on their record more of an opportunity to rent properties. And because it's not fair that they can't, right? It's BS. It's garbage. Okay, a landlord needs every tool possible to make the best screening, do the best job screening their tenants. Okay, so it doesn't help a landlord at all if you delete an eviction record from a tenant, and then that landlord has to go through months of unpaid rent, property torn apart. And all they would have had to know is, hey, well, this person was evicted three and a half years ago. So it's ridiculous, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. What do you think of this law? It's not even a law. It's really a way that a bureaucrat is trying to circumvent the law and make it more difficult for landlords to do their business, okay? What do you think of this sort of thing? I mean, I get sick of these progressive, left-leaning politicians, bureaucrats, etc., trying to punish landlords who are just trying to operate a business just like everyone else, okay? Now, to me, it would be kind of like saying, hey, I'm a bank and I'm trying to make a loan, and we're just going to delete the bankruptcy records so that the bank they'll hopefully give a loan, right? Or we'll make it impossible for a bank to run the credit check on their, no. Essentially, landlords are putting their financial hands into, their finances into the hands of another person, and that's their tenant. So you have a property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you don't want to see it torn up. You don't want to see your investment destroyed, and so that's why you want to put the best tenant in there. And unfortunately, for the people who have had evictions on their record, that is not the best person to put in your property. So let's get into this article. It's coming from local12.com, and it says, Hamilton County Clerk removes old eviction records from website, aiding future renters. Let's get into it. An estimated 33 eviction notices are filed every day in Hamilton County alone right now, or nearly 8% of all rental properties. But help could come for those who have had an eviction on their record and can't rent a new home. Hamilton County Clerk of Courts Pavan Parikh, butchered the name, implemented a new policy in May, removing eviction records closed through full payment or otherwise dismissed going back 3 years. It matches similar programs in Columbus and Dayton. So yeah, that's bad news right there. They already have programs like this going on in Columbus, Ohio and Dayton, Ohio. So like I said, I believe landlords should have every tool available in order to do the best tenant screening so they can put the best tenants in their property. Now, that doesn't mean that these people who have eviction filings on their record will be unable to find a place to rent, but it will not be my place. That's all I can say. It won't be the place of a lot of landlords, because a lot of landlords just don't want to deal with people who don't pay or don't pay on time, or just screw their landlords over, and the landlord had to file eviction against them. Public records remain, and evictions still show up on a thorough background or credit check, but landlords only check the clerk's website But many landlords only check the clerk's website for past evictions, and many evictions are filed for reasons that weren't even the tenant's fault, says Parikh. When we talked to our community partners and heard of all the different ways that simply having it filed can be a black mark that stays with people for the rest of their lives, we looked for solutions that we could use to alleviate some of that while still maintaining the records as we need to maintain them, he said. Yeah, and it should be a black mark in my opinion, okay? Now, if you don't pay your rent on time, well, what is the punishment for it? If you don't pay your rent at all, okay, how do landlords know that you're a problem tenant? They have to do a thorough background investigation, a credit check, check for evictions, etc. And then they can see all of the things, all the factors to put together to whether they want to rent to you or not. Now, I know plenty of landlords who will still rent to people with evictions on their record, depending on the circumstances behind it, okay? Now, I'm not one of them. I'll just be very blunt with you. I'm not one of them. I can find so many tenants right now for my properties that I don't need to rent to somebody who has an eviction filing on their record, even if they paid back the money that they owed, even if everything was cleared up. It still tells me that person is a problem and I don't want to deal with it. Parikh estimates 400,000 past eviction records dating back to 1998 were removed. About 11,000 records will roll off the website annually in future years. Nick DiNardo, managing attorney for the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati, says the move will help people get better access to housing, especially in Cincinnati's very tight rental market. No, it won't, okay? Simply put, this is my suggestion for all landlords up in Cincinnati, okay? Do the thorough background investigation. They're just removing this eviction from, the county's records. That is not thorough enough. You need to go further. Do everything you can to try to find out if the tenant has an eviction on their record or not. They're not doing you any favors. And fortunately, there is a good eviction process, and it's very much quicker process within the state of Ohio. So you at least have that available, but you shouldn't have to go through that because you don't want to put those bad tenants in your unit in the first place. If you don't put them in there in the first place, you don't have to deal with all the nonsense. It's going to be very helpful, DiNardo said. We see a lot of tenants who have perfect eviction records having difficulty finding an apartment right now. So if something happens due to circumstances beyond the tenant's control, job loss, illness, that sort of thing, it may be nearly impossible for them to find a decent apartment if they have just one eviction on their record. I love these tenant advocates, right? They're like, well, if something happens beyond the tenant's control, what does that have to do with the landlord? I mean, honestly, okay? Well, if you lost your job and then you didn't pay rent for 6 months, therefore, it's okay that, you have an eviction on your record, according to this moron, okay? These tenant advocates, they don't live in a place of reality. They don't know how a business operates because they've never run a business before. They're doing all this ridiculous nonsense and then talking about, hey, well, you should run your business like a charity. No, we're not charities. We never will be. We are businesses and we are trying to make a profit, and therefore we have a right to collect the rents, collect them on time, and we will file eviction against you if you do not pay. Parikh says the General Assembly in Columbus is also considering a bill that would expunge such records after 3 years. And honestly, I don't like reading that sort of thing because that tells me that this guy, he tried to circumvent, the actual laws and just throw a policy in place. And that's the ridiculousness of bureaucracy. That's what I hate is when I see, people who are ruling through bureaucracy, through policies and etc., rather than through the will of the people. Okay, the will of the people says, hey, we want property rights. We want, the person who owns the property to have the ability to remove the tenant. And they're like, well, we're going to remove those rights, and then give them over to this bureaucracy and, take away your ability to screen the tenants, take away your ability to reject tenants that don't fit into, what you want in your property. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I'm 100% opposed to this. And you know what? I I still would invest in Ohio. I still would, even with this sort of law, but maybe not within this Hamilton County. Okay, I'll go elsewhere outside of that area. That's the funny thing about big cities, right? They're surrounded by other counties and suburbs and other places to rent outside of the main city that actually, usually have less laws. And that's what a lot of landlords do.